Hello and welcome to Monarchist Minute. I'm Victor Smith, coming to you live from a hotel in Charlotte, North Carolina. Joining me today are Darth Kilhoun and, of course,
Yo,
our two usual suspects, Charles York and William Stout. And I was not expecting to record tonight, as I had already mentioned to y'all. So, William, what were you going to talk about tonight?
We are going to discuss some very heavy topics involving organized crime, gang violence, and its social impact on the community as a whole, its cultural symptoms, and basically how it just generally affects society as a whole. But before we get into that, that's the main topic tonight. We were going to give a few updates about Ukraine, talk about things that have been progressing in the war in Ukraine because we haven't talked about that in a wild minute. There's something else. I forget what it was. Give me a moment. Oh,
daylight saving time.
daylight savings. Yes, thank you.
Saving.
Thank you, Charles.
You're welcome.
So, okay.
Let us start with daylight saving time. Senator Marco Rubio of Florida introduced a bill in the U.S. Senate which passed unanimously, which he calls the Sunshine Protection Act, that would make daylight saving time permanent across the United States of America in 2023. This would have, according to the American Academy of Sleep and I forget what else, this would prove to be a disastrous effect on the U.S. economy. This was tried actually in the early 1970s, and it was panned after a short while after pictures surfaced of children waiting for their school buses in the dark.
So, what? I've had to do that before. It's not a big.
Yeah,
I've had to
I
walk
had to
home in
wait.
the dark.
Yeah, I had to wait outside because my parents would go to work. I had to wait outside while the neighbors a few houses down the street came and picked us up from school. Sometimes like dark weather, and it's I mean I know most people don't get to work at school at 7 a.m. like I do normally. Um, but you know it's still dark regardless of I mean the sun was coming up before we entered daylight saving time, but who cares? I mean,
Apparently, the argument that comes from the people that want it are, but I don't care if it's dark when I go to work, but when I am at work, I want it to be sunlight after work for outdoor activities.
Okay, I don't care what time we set it. If we set it so the sun's up later in the day or if it's up earlier in the day, I just want them to pick a time and keep it, okay?
I just don't want the rest of the international world to be like way off syncer with us. That's just my opinion.
That too. I mean, how many other countries besides the US practice daylight savings?
Not many.
not all of them.
All of like Western Europe, I know, does this. I know that England does daylight saving time.
I think the general rule is like the further away from the equator you get, because they get a lot more sun than us northerners do. It's they're going to use it, or like Russia, apparently they moved to permanent daylight saving time because cold and dark and miserable. I mean, as a Michiganian, I'm all for it. I mean, maybe you want to. I guess Hawaii could be the exception because the weather over there is sunny and beautiful forever. But
And of course, Arizona is on standby standard time year long. So, according to that act, Arizona and Hawaii, the two states that do not use daylight saving time, will be allowed to keep their standard time designations.
Oh,
Oh,
except there's an Indian reservation in Arizona that uses daylight saving time, but there's an Indian reservation inside the Indian reservation that doesn't, and it's complicated and confusing, and I don't like it.
Right, and we really don't need to get into that right now.
this is why we could just abolish it. Keep it on normal, regular time, standard time, and then
I
now
mean,
get back.
the daylight savings time was originally meant for farmers when you actually had to go out and physically labor in the field. It ceased to meet its function when automation truly came into effect in most of the economies of
Oh,
Europe and the West in general.
the article I read is it had to do with World War One and fuel conservation. They
Oh,
left,
oh,
I
they,
mean, they implemented it in World War One because it was wartime and it was to mess up the German clocks if they caught our intelligence. But yeah,
Germany
they
and
implemented it first.
Brazil.
Well, I always heard that the guy who came up with the concept just wanted more sunlight to catch more bugs because he was one of the people who takes delight in like capturing insects and like poking them with
Well,
sticks
that
and then
would be
keeping them on
Benjamin
boards.
Franklin, and he was the guy that also tied a key to a kite so he could play with lightning.
No, I thought the
We
guy who
all
invented
know,
that
we all
was
know
a
how
New
much fun
Zealander.
that is.
Yeah, New
So,
Zealanders.
of
No
course.
joke.
I know that Japan does not use daylight saving time. But we'd have to look at the statistics on that because I think a lot of Western Europe actually does use daylight saving time because they want to be like us. No surprise there.
yeah, it's our economic zone thing. So
So,
you
Yeah,
can
but
blame the EU and NATO for that.
and my thing with daylight saving time is if scientists are saying that standard time is better than daylight saving time, then I want it on standard time. I am
well,
agnostic personally, but if scientists are saying that standard time is better, then I'll side with the scientists
well,
on
no,
that.
I mean this is sort of the thing. I mean, they're one of the debates on whether or not changing the clock every year is worth it or not. Apparently, there are people who say it saves more electricity, or people who say it will save less energy, or whatever. But the difference was always like pennies or whatever. Now, permanently moving the clock forward, um, I mean, I don't. I think that ultimately, whatever you do, everybody's just going to adjust eventually. I mean, we're in daylight saving time more like was it like 8 months out of the year? We're in daylight saving time more than standard time nowadays. They kept
We are in daylight saving time right now. We actually switched our clocks this past
no, yeah,
weekend, I think.
I know, but we're in daylight saving time as a we're in daylight saving time more than we are in standard time.
Correct.
Like we
Correct.
switched the so I mean I just get it over already. Okay, we got a lot of clocks that do it automatically now, but I have this stupid thing where you know those kinds of experiences where you keep doing something that you think is vaguely right, but it's not working, and then somehow you do it right, but you don't know what you did differently.
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, that's me changing the stupid clock time on this thing. I mean, it's almost easier for me just to. I mean, probably it would be easier for me just to unplug the thing and then replug it in and set the time from fresh because.
That could be a bit of a problem. I know that the microwave and the stove in my house and ditto for my alarm clock do not auto adjust and they have to be manually adjusted.
Yeah, most clocks do that. Most like alarm clocks don't do that because I mean, what are you gonna do? Connect your microwave to the internet? Although it's 2022, they probably already have something like that. I mean, we have refrigerators with flippin' tablets built in. What the heck?
I work in the appliance industry. They can make appliances that hook up to the internet, and it is the stupidest thing ever. I'm gonna go off tangent real quick to rant. I hate, despise the fact that Whirlpool put Wi-Fi in a dryer. It's so unnecessary. You don't need to remotely connect and control a dryer because you gotta be in front of it to put the clothes in it in the first place. It is so stupidly unnecessary.
Well, I mean, putting Wi-Fi, but if you put Wi-Fi in product, that means you can charge more for product.
You could also lower the price for product and increase the market by making it cheaper and easier to obtain for more people.
Yes, but think about it. Then you also get to pay developers to make stupid apps that you have to tailor make to every single different appliance. So you have 150 versions of an app that's like barely functional at the best of times. Isn't
Then
that just better?
you're saving money because the app is probably free anyway.
Yeah, no, yeah, I know, but think about it. Okay, you're providing a terrible experience to your customers that will make them hate your product. Isn't that just a win? No? Then why does everybody keep doing it?
Never run a business.
Oh, come on. I mean, I'm sure. Let me think back to my own personal business ventures. Let's see. I tried to sell uh art, like drawings of ships, like in fourth grade for like 5 cents. Problem. Nobody liked ships, and my drawings weren't that good, as you might imagine. Let's see. So that business venture failed. I never really got into the lemonade stand business like a lot of kids do.
I sold
See, my business ventures weren't all that bad. I mean, it didn't. I mean, the bank didn't foreclose.
I sold turkeys. That was my business growing up.
You grew up
I
on a
mean,
farm.
No, I raised them in my garage.
I just imagine. I got all these like big farming corporations that say free range. I wonder if the legal loophole has raised them in a garage somewhere.
Took 2 big pieces of plywood, set them on cinder blocks, covered it in pine shavings, put fencing around it, and that was my turkey pen.
Did was Thanksgiving your busy season? No.
Oh no, it was all done during the summer. It was for fair and stuff.
Mm. Was it a sizable enough income that you had to put it on your income tax?
I never paid taxes on any of it. The birds were auctioned afterwards.
And with that, my investigation is complete. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I have been an undercover IRS operative the entire time, and I have just been waiting to get Will here to admit publicly this fact.
Congratulations! I have committed, when I was like 13 or 12, I committed tax evasion. What you going to do?
Uh,
Oh, what IRS
Probably.
meant.
Well,
implement
given that we
universal
probably
income
spent
tax.
given that we probably spent about 4 times as much funneling this little sting operation as we would have by you paying as we would have gained by you paying the taxes, I guess we laugh and throw the book at you and out of anger and spite. I'm joking, obviously. If I
Right.
was an IRS operative, I would have been a lot more dull and I wouldn't even attempted to crack a joke.
You would have sounded like the teacher from Bueller's Day Off.
William,
Um,
William, William, William.
good.
To anyone in the IRS who may at some point watch this program, just know you perform a somewhat vital job, but that doesn't mean we have to like you. We
It's,
respect you as people. We
it's
hope
like
you don't.
they're
What?
like meter maids. Everyone hates what they do, but somebody has to do it.
We can't afford meter maids in my town. Actually, I don't know if that's true. Somebody hands out the tickets, but I don't know if we have dedicated meter maids. I think we just.
I feel like being a meter maid is the job you give the cop that everyone on the force hates, and they
But
do
I
it.
was only over parked by 5 minutes.
Those 5 minutes are very important, though.
Yeah, I mean,
Honestly, if I were a meter maid, I would try and make the best of it. Because I'm a very, very horrible and mean person if I choose to be.
you're gonna be looking. I mean, you're not just looking to see if the meter's overdue. You're looking to see if the tag's expired. Do you guys have tags in Ohio on your license plates?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think
Are yours funny colors, or do yours just have the year on them?
it has the year of expiration. And you can buy like 5-year tags, so
Yeah, we do it like every. I think you get 1 year or 2 year tags, and it's
it's
and then
actually
there's like colors for the year that it expires, and it's the month that it expires. So whichever year your birth month is the one that's on that.
And
Uh,
we have permanent tags in Montana.
lucky.
well, look at you with your sensible policies.
Yeah, never get a tag in your life.
So
Speaking of tags, there are, I imagine, a lot of tags on toes of bodies that have been murdered.
oh, that got dark.
Yeah. I've got,
Toe tag.
Baltimore City continues to break records for monthlies in terms of murders, which segs nicely into our next topic of gang violence.
And
Okay.
I guess I get to lead the story here because an incident that what happened uh in at my house is sort of what inspired this topic and the title of this episode. So, as you'll have read from the title of the episode, metric criminality, this has something to do with the evil metric system. You see, a roving band of metric
Evil metric
ultranationalists.
system.
No, I'm joking. But the roving band, the Metric Ultranationalists, was beaten a couple of years ago because they couldn't because they were busted for not driving the speed limit. But anyways, no. So my house was shot 10 times. See, 10 base 10, haha, metric. Haha. Anyways, by a bunch of well, they call themselves blank name mafia, even though they're not really a mafia in any sort of real sense. They're just a bunch of hoodlums.
They call
Who?
them the what meme mafia?
What?
The what meme
No,
mafia?
no. It's name mafia. They're named after. I'll explain the story. So my house was shot by these people. And the reason they shot my house is because they thought that my house was the house of the people that they were actually trying to hit. Now, the people that they were actually trying to hit, the person that they were trying to hit in that house, apparently was involved with the killing of the person whom this mafia is named after, who was apparently a kid who dressed well and was popular or whatnot. So yeah, so that happened. And after the police left, they shot up the house that they were actually trying to hit, which is something a little weird about this because yes, all the houses in this area are built to the same general floor plan. As you do. It was the 1940s. That's just how this works. Um, but my house is the house that was shot up. The house that they were actually trying to hit is like a dark. It's like the worst matte black that you will ever see. My house isn't that color. It's not, and it was in broad daylight too. Like, how do you? Anyways, the long and the short of it is this all feeds in. This wasn't just a random hit and run thing. This was not hit and run, a drive by thing. This was a actual, apparently according to the current theories, a targeted revenge play. and I probably got into a little too much specifics already, but hey, that's the gist of it. Yeah, so that's the motivation for talking about gang violence and criminality and yeah.
And 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 off air, Charles has told us some more details. We of course won't get into those finer details in the recording of this podcast, of course, but
Yeah, they'll probably be able to piece together roughly where I live if they bother to watch. Anyways,
but but you know, it's really it's it's tragic anytime this happens. It's it's tragic anytime this happens, and I think, like, what can we do to stop it? I can think of something that could work to stop it, but it would be very unpopular.
I think mine will actually be probably the most popular here.
Okay, what's yours?
Well, first off, we have this military that's not allowed to act in a law enforcement way in the United States. So just repeal that law, and just give the infantry enough bullets and the strikers, and use the FBI to gather enough intelligence. Yeah. We need a gendarmerie force. I do agree with
So you do
Leon and
pick the
yeah.
National Guard on all the gangbangers.
Yeah, I would, but I would first gather enough intelligence from police reports, FBI investigations, NSA investigations, wiretap suspects, and have an operation to compile all this intelligence upon leaders and all ranking members, and try to systematically either tag and bag or put them in prison. More the former instead of the latter, because we already have an overpopulated prison system.
I
Now,
mean, we could take over Australia.
that can't
We,
just
we could.
we can't just extrajudiciously start killing gangbangers.
Hey, if we have enough evidence to convict them, yeah, it's already done.
I mean, yeah, I mean, but I mean, as effective as that solution may be for a one-time, temporary fix, although you would ensure
It would
that.
send a message real quickly
Oh,
if they'll
it was
do
send a
this.
message real quick. I don't think that it would address the sort of root cause, particularly of the
Correct.
sort of. These sorts of people, by and large, don't have, and I know it isn't just this, but they don't. They they don't really have decent home lives. Their fathers are either absent or not a stabilizing influence, or heck, they may be even involved in this sort of dealio
But well,
Correct.
yes, you were just
themselves.
asking about how to deal with the violence. Like that's how you deal with the violence.
Oh,
But
the
you'd have to
violence.
also do
Oh,
the societal aspect too. You'd have to think about that in the long-term project, which
Yes,
would be
and
intergenerational.
yeah.
yes, and just
And I know a lot of it has to do with lack of economic opportunity too, especially as jobs moved out of the US, the inner cities really suffered as a
right.
result. And
And I know that Baltimore City, I think west of Martin Luther King Boulevard, was redlined to destruction, essentially.
Let's also stop naming streets after social revolutionaries. Can we do that?
Yeah. Also, why is it always Martin Luther King Boulevard, not like Martin Luther King Road or Drive? It's always like
Avenue
Boulevard for
or
some reason.
yeah. How about we just stop naming stuff after these people?
Yeah.
hey, it could be. I have nothing against Dr. King. Now, if we named it after maybe someone a bit dicier, like, I don't know, maybe Malcolm X when he was in his.
You know, Malcolm X was actually pretty based if you looked into his hot takes.
Um, I don't want to. I I don't know. I see what that X stands for. No. Anyways, before we get canceled by the oh no, we've already been canceled. My comments on women's suffrage doomed us with that.
Anyway,
Anyways,
let's
I think another big thing that feeds into violence, especially gun violence in the US, is organized crime, and then we have to talk about the deals with drug trafficking and things associated with organized crime. Like, my town isn't super big, so we don't have like organized gangs, but we do have a lot of like one time deal hits and like drug deals going wrong. You guys know what I mean, like just
Yeah.
one-off shootings that aren't really associated with a gang but are associated in some way with drug dealing
yeah.
or
I
I
mean,
mean, yeah, that's another societal issue that would take generations to wean the people off of. Um, it's just the problem when it's the back door of democratic systems, as it allows for easy entry of degeneracy, just because of lack of force to effectively control civilization. I mean, Plato kind of talked about this even back in ancient Athens, how the ancient Athenians, because of the introduction of democracy, rampant degeneracy came into Athens because the democratic authorities didn't really want to enforce anything because it would make them unpopular.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. It just the societal thing ultimately, whatever the solution, and I think there's a lot of valid solutions out there. But only my opinion is the correct one.
hey.
Yes.
That is, I mean, that's how a monarch rules, and it's absolute Chad.
So like there's a lot of I think the base issue right now is that the people in these neighborhoods their the older kids in their neighborhood, and they're making money, and they have these cars and these fancy clothes, and I want to be like that guy.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, so we just snatch away those false father figures and get them with real father figures. Also, let's introduce conscription again to teach these young fools what actual masculinity is.
yeah. I mean, I don't. I mean, I think that if you sent in like a good amount of actual masculine priests to serve as father figures, then they could start to turn any rough community around. A stabilizing, whether and it could be conscription, it could be anything else. But what these people need is they need, uh, firstly, they need the truth, in regards to religion and temporal matters, religious and temporal matters, and they also need, uh, and they also need a stabilizing father figure to show them how to act in the same way, because a lot of people in modern society don't have that. I mean, I'm fortunate enough that I've had that and I have that. But a lot of people in society don't, and it's these sorts of people, by and large, who get caught up in this sort of deal, and that's real sad. Especially when these young kids, some of which haven't even graduated high school yet, are being sent to jail for shooting up places, or are being sent to jail.
Or it gets worse. Don't
Yeah,
worry.
or it gets worse, for killing,
Oh
killing
no 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 no
kids.
no! No, I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about the school stuff.
Oh yeah, no, the schools are also a big part of it. My next door neighbor actually worked at a school, and it's like fourth, and she says like fourth grade on up. Like there's like no respect for the teachers. Um, and it's, I mean, and this is the sort of thing that you can't fix overnight. It's just like this didn't crop up overnight. Uh, it, I mean, and I mean, I'm sitting here, and yeah, do I know what is best. I mean, probably not. But then again, you have decades of social scientists or whatever you want to call them who are like, we just need to do this in order to curb gang violence, and clearly it ain't working. These um, sort of LBJ Great Society thing, which was partly one of the pushes for that was because of those what was it, '67? You had all those race riots, and
It was
the
68, it was 68.
68, and you had all
After
these
the
terrible riots.
deaths of King and RFK, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, you had all these terrible, terrible riots where a bunch of property got smashed up and people died, of course. And LBJ is like, we need to do this, 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 and this because part of the problem is the fact that I remember watching one of his speeches or listening, watching, and he's like there's a lot of like rodents or whatever in the cities, which I mean that's rodents in cities has always been a problem since time immemorial, but um I mean
A lot of it had to do with us and the way we restructured our economy as globalization began. And this will be my moment to talk about what Reagan did. Reagan and his urban renewal projects and the projects to basically try and save the cities that were dying from the deindustrialization brought on by globalization overly favored the suburbs and the wealthier areas of the city, and often came at the disastrous cost of those that actually lived in the urban environments, such as destruction of public transportation infrastructure, defunding of urban schools, um, harming neighborhoods and inner city businesses, small businesses in favor of chain stores and other larger enterprises that primarily benefited those who lived in the suburbs more than those who lived in cities. And this isn't necessarily a racial thing. It hurt everyone who lived in the cities.
So
And
I would
us,
argue, actually, I would argue that it is indeed a racial thing because most of the population in these sort of inner cities that got redlined were black, and there's a reason why white flight existed.
and that is a true counter argument. And there is a very big argument that one could make, and honestly, it is agreeable that a majority of the people who were able to escape urban renewal projects and basically the mothballing of urban infrastructure and urban life in the US were overwhelmingly white.
yeah, and I guess the thing with urban renewal and all the and there are a few things that a man needs to have a stable life. He needs to have his faith in God. He needs to have a source of employment, right? Something to get up for and work for every day, other than and then he needs to have a stable family life. And if you have those three things, then you are pretty much set. So society has taken away from most people the faith. America was sort of against the faith from the beginning, but any sort of
One,
generalized faith has been sort of
one thing that the black community still has, God bless their souls.
yeah. Although it's sort of like everywhere else, it's sort of falling apart. I guess. I mean, it's. I mean,
Well,
I
It's
mean,
there's
the
a
money grabbing low church, big church Protestants
yeah,
most of the time, though.
yeah.
So it's not really a benefit to their community in the long term because, like, those roaming preachers that have like 3 private jets, that's pretty much the norm for these inner communities. So I
you,
don't
you
think
said
that
don't you said Roman or Roman?
Roaming,
roaming,
roaming.
Okay.
No, no, no. I
yeah,
mean,
Fair, those exist in the suburbs too. Just look at Kenneth Copeland.
yeah,
they do, but they really have a large following, especially in most of the poor black communities. Just saying.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
People
really
with
weird.
money and they want that.
Yeah, I mean, It is so odd when I pass by a Baptist church. Firstly, why do you keep calling everything First Baptist Church? Like it's not the First Baptist Church, and like
It's
there's
the
like five
first
of them.
100th Baptist church.
It probably isn't even the first Baptist church in your city, especially if you see two Baptist church saying first. Anyways, um,
Also, they're not churches because they're not properly consecrated.
Nice too. Like my church is the United Methodist Church.
isn't there like a schism going on with you guys, like switching between United? And I don't know. I won't get into that. But anyways, I don't know.
Okay, and
My statement was gonna be, um, uh, it's just odd to see that these churches have their pastors listed on there as if that was some sort of selling point. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, a lot of Catholics go to certain parishes because the priest has better sermons, or you may have a priest who somehow manages to say an Easter Vigil Mass, and then Easter Vigil Mass with confirmations, weddings, and baptisms in an hour and a half. True story.
I admit I kind of do that
Yeah,
with the preference of priest.
yeah, I mean, but still, I mean, the idea that that you can have like a parish, or well, I don't call it parishes, but it's you're only going for that pasta, right? I mean, it's like at a Catholic church, the priest says the words of consecration, you're receiving Jesus Christ, body, blood, soul, and divinity, and with a lot of priests, you're going to get. I mean, bad homilies are an inevitable part of things by most of the time. So, yeah.
and and Darth had mentioned consecration. I'm going to use that as a segue to discuss our next topic. This is related to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and we can get into more sort of political and war updates right after this, but I have some news from the Vatican. Pope Francis has invited all of the bishops of the world to join him next Friday, the 25th, which coincides with the Feast of the Annunciation, which celebrates the conception of our Lord, to consecrate Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. For those of you that may not know how big of a deal this is, in an apparition in Fatima, Portugal, the Blessed Virgin Mary appeared to 3 people, and she said that the Pope, in union with the bishops of the world, was to consecrate Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary so that Russia would stop spreading her errors. And it appears that this is now finally happening next week.
And
So guys, go sign up for the Russian army today. You can spread Christianity the proper way.
I mean, if that happened, and Russia, like over the next few years, suddenly became a bastion of glorious Catholicism, I mean, I joined a Russian Foreign Legion, but somebody's gonna take that out of context. It's a good thing we don't have a large following, because somebody would take that out of context. I just know it.
Ukraine is a puppet of the West.
Oh boy, we. Anyways, I just hope that because Pope John Paul II tried to consecrate the world to the Immaculate Heart, and I guess that didn't particularly work because he didn't specify Russia by name. So I'm hoping that Pope Francis.
Well, according to Sister Lucia, one of the seers at Fatima, it did work. However, there is a conspiracy theory out there that claims that the Sister Lucia that said that is not the real Sister Lucia, but we don't need to get into that.
no,
Can people go 5 seconds without creating a conspiracy theory about the Catholic Church?
And even if
Can you-
the 80 and even if the 84 consecration did work, what's the harm in reconsecrating it?
Yeah.
I mean, like, Russia stopped spreading its false doctrine in 1991, and the fact that the apostolic faith in Russia has rose again with the Russian patriarchy making a return. I have much faith that Russia is actually going to be the vanguard for the rebirth of Christendom in the coming century.
Yeah, it's just
I'm a little bit more skeptic. I see the Russian patriarchy really increasingly as a puppet for the Russian state.
well,
Same
it was
with most
always
Protestants.
no. I mean I mean the Russian. Okay, so brief crash course history lesson for somebody who really isn't apparently qualified. But Russia's patriarchy was suppressed in like the 1700s or whatever, and replaced by the Holy Synod of Russia. And then after the Russian Revolution, I think maybe the Bolsheviks were the ones who reestablished the Russian patriarchy, and that was basically under the thumb of the communist government until the fall of the Soviet Union, where they did all sorts of unpleasant things, like trying to force the Eastern Catholics in the Ukraine back
That's
into.
that's not entirely true. What happened was the communists abolished all forms of religion. They entered state atheism,
Except for Islam.
nationalized church land and stuff, seized church property, demolished churches. The patriarchate didn't return until the start of World War II and Operation Barbarossa, in which case Stalin brought back the bishops and the patriarchate as a form of moral support to basically provide spiritual, moral, you know what I'm saying, like
Yeah.
spiritual.
How don't you know that if God was using Stalin?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
Theory.
I find it hard to believe, but
No. I mean, apparently Kerensky was the one who reestablished. No, I mean, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, the Russian patriarchy was reestablished in 1917. But no, I mean, yeah, Lenin. I mean, no, I mean there's this term that some of the Orthodox like to throw around called Caesaropapism, which is the idea that if we if we give the Pope the sort of place that we Catholics know that he should have, then the Pope will become basically a vassal to one particular prince and be subject to his interest. But history has shown that that does happen, but for the patriarchs, like the patriarchs, a lot of them tend to go back or sort of in this position now to who's the current Russian patriarch,
Krill.
For real.
Karel. um I don't know his intention. I've heard wide things about the varying legality of Catholicism in Russia specifically. I've heard that it's legit for the Roman Rite, but not for the Eastern Catholic rites. I've heard it's allowed. I've heard such things as technically the Eastern Catholic churches are not even allowed to proselytize, and when a Catholic priest set up a playground set up a playground in front of the church, he was kind of shut down because that might lead a little Orthodox kids to go in, and they might learn some Catholic catechesis there, and all that. So I've heard ranging things.
So I had this explained to me actually fairly recently by a Russian. So Russia has.
This is a good time to plug Darth.
Oh yeah. I recently did an interview with Alt Monarchist. It's yet to be up on my channel. I'm still rendering the full interview. It's quite long, but in that video, he actually explained like how the Russia relationship with kind of all religion works. There's this religious council that is not part of the Russian government, but works with the Russian government, and they have representatives from each of the major sects of all faiths. Like they have representatives from Islam, and they have representatives from Judaism. They have representatives from the Orthodox Church, Catholic Church. They even have a representative for Protestants. Buddhist, Hindus, and a few others. And every church in Russia has to register with a representative that is in Moscow that is representing their specific sect. So all Protestants, no matter their denomination, has to register with the Protestant representative. All Orthodox churches have to register, of course, with the representative of the Orthodox Church to the Russian government. Same with Eastern and Western Roman Catholics in Russia. They have to register with the Catholic representative, etc., and etc. And when you see these articles of churches being shut down or various synagogues or mosques being shut down in Russia, it's because they're specifically these churches, synagogues, mosques, temples, etc., that refuse to register with their representative in Moscow. So the Russian government doesn't know if this is a cult or if this is a church. So they have to treat it like a cult if they're refusing to cooperate with the officially established representative council. And then they go in and shut it down because, well, most likely it is a cult. So that's why they have a very low tolerance for people who will not comply with the very generous system Russia set up for them to use.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel a lot more comfortable with that system once glorious state Catholicism has been established. But yeah. I mean, the possibility of stopping weird, creepy, Satanistic cults seems very appealing.
Yeah,
Because-
Satanism is very much not tolerated under Russian law. They will not allow it inside Russia, and they shut it down at the smallest sniff of any possibility of a cult existing. Same with any like Wicca. It's kind of hard to find the pagan ones, but they do occasionally shut down pagan cults. So
Isn't
yeah.
like the isn't like the traditional like pre-Christian Russian religion sort of one of the accepted things over there? Like you have the like
If you're talking about amongst certain political factions, yes, but why? But to the Russian state, no, it's not accepted.
yeah, the
And now for updates on the actual conflict, we turn to William Stout.
Well, things are very bogged down. Russia is continuing to be an incompetent excuse for a world power. Kiev
Uh,
yet to fall, and
no.
Ukrainians have Turkish drones, and they're making very, very, very effective use of them, turning Russian convoys to ash and our drivers into ghosts.
Yeah, and I mean that happens in every single war, so I don't know why people are so surprised that there's casualties in a war. Oh, I did know that happened. So
no, I
I mean,
mean
I don't get this Western hysteria. We're so used to like only casualties being around like a dozen because of our stupid wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. They've neutered us to actual consequences of war. Like Russia, everything for them is going according to their operational plan. They're not quite on the timeline, but they are achieving their goals. They've surrounded all the Ukrainian forces in Mariupol. They're about to close the pocket of Ukrainian forces trapped in the Donbass region. They are almost encircled of Kiev. I refuse to call it Kyiv, by the way. That's only a change that they did in the last couple of years.
you refuse
I
to
don't
call
even,
it you
I
ref-
don't
you-
even, I don't even think it was the last couple of years. I think it's the last couple of.
I've never heard it called Kiev instead of Kiev.
Well, okay, so apparently the Ukrainians wanted us to start calling it Kyiv because it's closer to the actual Ukrainian as opposed to the Russian, sort of like how the Chinese wanted us to stop calling it Peking and have us start calling it Beijing and all that. Uh, but that meme template. You refuse to call it Kiev because of political reasons. I refuse to call it Kiev because I like the sound of Kiev better. We are not the
Oh,
same.
Also,
Fundamentally,
the Kievan Rus is a lot rolls off the tongue more than the Kiev Rus.
Kievan Rus. You're right. You're 100% right. But back to the war. The issue isn't that Russia isn't making gains. It's the fact that they're making gains in such a disastrous and costly way. And you could say that they're claiming their goals all they want and that they're a little off their timeline. And a war that they expected to take and achieve their goals in about a week, we're going on almost 3 weeks, and they've
Well,
yet to achieve any meaningful goals.
did
Ukraine is not surrendering.
Literally okay, I'm in the military, so I know this firsthand. Like, you're trained to expect your plan to work, but you always know it's gonna fail. Like, it's just the subtle subtext that you always know. Once you hit the ground, something will go wrong immediately. That's the trope of every military.
wasn't it
Literally,
wasn't it Molke or Molke who said no plan ever
Molkev.
Molka who said no plan ever survives first contact with the enemy?
And that's
Yes, and
true. That's
it's
understandable. But most plans, after they shatter and don't survive first contact with the enemy, the officers on the ground still manage to achieve and gain a fruitful victory in most circumstances.
so says you. Like, America has a doctrine: if you don't have a 3-to-1 advantage, you just retreat. No ifs, ands, or buts. Like, there's doctrines that people follow, and if there's like a doctrine, you retreat if you meet these circumstances, which that's what you see Russia doing. Like, they send out a probing force, they get attacked, they pull back, and that's their reconnaissance, and then they readjust their attack strategy from there.
And
That's how they've always fought wars. That's how Russia has fought wars ever since the Russo-Turkish wars back in the day.
Yeah,
and
there's
convoys get obliterated.
well, I mean, there's not.
Have you seen the Ukrainian convoys? They've also been obliterated far worse than the Russian ones have been. Just saying.
Yeah, I mean,
And of course, you have every single media outlet in this country reporting the pro-Ukrainian side and decrying any pro-Russian actions as coming from Russian propagandists instead of it being independently.
Oh, I watch Arabic news. I don't touch Western. I don't touch Eastern. I touch the Arabs and the Indians because they at least don't have a stake in this fight.
yeah, I mean,
That's actually a fairly good idea.
yeah, the I don't know why didn't I think of that? I have a 500 IQ. No, um,
Now, hang on a second, not to get off tangent. How do you manage to find one that speaks English, or do you just use subtitles?
All these networks do their programs in English. Like,
Really?
you go to Indian news networks. Like, yes, they'll have, like, of course, Indian news in
Hindi.
fucking Hindi. Yeah, and then you'll have, of course, Arabic news in Arabic. But they'll have an English section because, well, English is the lingua franca for all information.
That's true, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like the whole thing is that people, the Western media is like, wow, Putin wasn't counting on this. I mean, you never know what to
He's
count
sucking
on.
so bad. Look at the picture of the hot Ukrainian that's on the battlefield.
No, I mean,
Totally not, and she has an airsoft rifle.
yeah, no, I mean, no, I mean, of course, you never fully know what to expect. I mean, okay, I know obligatory Jacobite moment. Okay, the 1740, the 1745 rebellion. Everybody was counting on there being uh, a lot more support from the English Jacobites than there actually was. In total, I think they raised like maybe a regiment of English Jacobites in the 45. Because the assumption was that the as soon as the army from Scotland go into England, then everybody would just rise up or whatever. I'm probably dramatically oversimplifying, but hey. And that unfortunately didn't pan out. There were still a lot of English Jacobites. It's just that they didn't, all suddenly rise up. And maybe they would have if Bonnie Prince Charlie was convinced his leaders to push on from Derbyshire. But whatever, I could be salty for that
But
till the
that's
end of time. But anyways,
hindsight.
that's beside the point. That's beside the point. Anyways, so the point is that you never know what you're going to expect. Maybe Putin and his generals were a little optimistic, and um, were maybe a little optimistic and expected that because Eastern Ukraine historically has leaned more Russian than Western Ukraine, maybe they were expecting an easier march in, and the populace would either just roll over and accept it, or maybe if they're really optimistic, say they join up with them or whatever. Maybe, or
I
I don't know.
mean,
I mean, was there
I
actually an actual timetable that has been leaked of the invasion? Like, or is this
no,
Putin thought
there
it would fall
hasn't
in a
been.
week? Or is this Putin thought it fall in a week is just an assumption on
It,
behalf of the media?
it's mostly an assumption by the Western media. I mean, what if you're talking about like Ukraine joining Russia? Like there has been actually a large proportion of Ukrainian soldiers just throwing down their arms. Most of the heavy resistance in Ukraine is actually coming from their National Guard, because their National Guard or Gendarmerie force is made up of a bunch of political extremists, men that were given the opportunity to actually have some representation in the Ukrainian government through the National Guard. And because that they're politically aligned with the regime, we're talking about battalions like Azov or Right Sector. Um, they are the most extreme because they know if Russia takes over, they will be on the execution block because they have been committing atrocities in the Donbass region, like active genocide against the ethnic Rus in the area and against the Russian Orthodox Church that refuses to swap over to the Ukrainian Patriarch. That's also been a major contention
Issue.
point. And so, like most of the loyal soldiers of Ukraine are coming from the National Guard, where they are politically reliable to the Ukrainian regime, and they've had some of the best funding and best training over the last couple of years because they know they're the politically expedient soldiers. Well, then the Ukrainian army has been continuously underfunded and under-equipped, except for very select units, because they know that the Ukrainian army is made up of more of your standard Ukrainians, that a lot of them have sympathy with Russia. So you've been seeing a lot of surrenders and just whole units going over to the Russian side in this conflict from the Ukrainian army. That's not being reported in the West. It has been reported on RT, of course, but it's also been corresponded by Arab and Indian news sources, like I mentioned earlier. So this whole
Well,
war is a
this is
complete fog from the
I
Western side.
that because I've been watching a lot of footage that's been coming out of Ukraine, which has been showing a lot of the exact opposite. We've been seeing a lot of Russians being captured, a lot of Russians surrendering, especially some of the conscripts. And we're seeing especially much of the Russian like lower end troops being very demoralized, partisan actions and stuff, massive protests. And this isn't necessarily news footage. This is coming from footage that's being posted by people who are in the area on the ground as it's happening, citizens and people who are in the country. And there isn't a lot of sympathy for the Russians. In fact, there's a lot of anger against the Russians.
Yeah,
Though, of course, you're also seeing it from very biased sources too. Even on social media, there's a lot of banning of any pro-Russian rhetoric from all sources, like even on places like Reddit, where generally you think that there's a lot of free speech. But no, a lot of moderators on those platforms are censoring any footage that go contrary to um, uh, the Ukrainian narrative in this war. So I'm also highly skeptical of anything coming out of social media. And yes, there are protests in Russia, but they're the same people that have been protesting Putin for years. Putin is still a very popular figure in Russia that garners roughly 60% of the votes. In fact, with this invasion, he actually garnered more support, especially from the Russian nationalists and Russian monarchists that previously didn't really like Putin in Russian politics.
well, I can imagine they support him because in their eyes, Ukraine is Russian land.
I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean,
it is even from a lot of Ukrainians' point of views.
no,
Like
I mean,
if you could watch Coach Red Pill streams, like he shows pretty much like the non-existent destruction in this war to civilian infrastructure, unlike the West, where they like to say, "Ah, look at this apartment building; it got hit." One apartment building, and the rest of them are fine around it, but they won't show the other ones because it will go against their narrative. Also, Ukrainian forces are using civilian targets for staging grounds. Like one of the schools that was hit, that was all up in the news, was a staging ground for a Ukrainian special operations force in the Ukrainian army. That's why it got hit. Um, and then they're putting artillery near residential areas to try to keep the Russian Air Force from attacking. But of course, that's just getting civilians killed on the part of the Ukrainian army. So,
I mean,
I know Mariupol is getting shelled like crazy right now because it's refusing to surrender.
that's
yeah,
like
that's
that.
because it's being run by the Azov regiment, and the Azov regiment literally said that they are going to fight to the death in Adrianople. They've turned the entire city into a kill zone, which is why the Russians are going to have to be aggressive with Adrianople, unlike how they've had the kids' gloves on for most of the rest of the countryside.
Yeah, I mean, this whole.
I think if we want to give a quick summary of what we think this conflict is, because I want to move on to a lighter topic to end the episode, just a quick little summary of what you think this conflict is and the closest sort of analog to previous history that we can draw from to do like a quick summary of what we think this conflict is and will become. And we'll start with Darth first, then we'll go to Charles and Will.
So, I mean, mine is the most pro-Russian on the side because I've been maintaining surveillance upon the Ukrainian situation for years now. How there's been an active ethnic cleansing of Russians in the Donbass region, even when they have had little fighting capability. You've been seeing mass rapes in that area of ethnic Russians by Ukrainian soldiers and especially by regiments like Azov. You've been seeing a lot of persecution of just average Russians not even involved in the civil war in Ukraine for years. You've been seeing the shutdown of the Orthodox Church that will not comply with the Kievan Patriarchy, but still owe loyalty to the Moscow Patriarchy. You've been seeing a lot of things that have warranted this invasion by the Russian army on terms of humanitarian grounds. So I am sympathetic to the Russian cause in this. The Ukrainians have for years been client states of the West. They have been used to be a buffer zone against Russia, and in that, and to agitate Russia and to possibly form an alliance with the United States to provoke Russia. So I firmly maintain that Ukraine is one, not even a country that shouldn't exist. It is an integral part of the Russian Empire, always has been. It's only been in the last 100 years Ukraine has been even conceptualized as an idea. Ukraine does not have a history, it does not have a past dating back over 100 years.
Okay, and now Charles.
I I largely see this as sort of one of those brother wars that we really shouldn't be having, and you know, uh, this, and I said this a while ago, I think a couple episodes ago, that this wouldn't have happened under the old Tsarist regime, because under the Tsarist regime, both of them were united in service of the emperor. And this, once again, as we said before on the show, that even beyond pure ethnicity, people can find loyalty in a common, nobleman. Now, what I really want is that I sort of I don't want Ukraine to go to the West as it exists right now, because if Ukraine goes to the West as it is right now, it will lose its soul, like uh like a lot of Eastern Europe is currently at risk of losing its soul, and I hope that Eastern Europe uses this as an opportunity to break free from Western influence, and sort of form its own bloc and unite itself by the Catholic faith and by the and sort of its Habsburg legacy. But um, so I don't want Ukraine to go to the West. But at the same time, I feel as if there's anything left of the independent Ukrainian state, if Russia wins, that's probably what's going to happen. If Russia's victory isn't total and they don't establish their, and they don't either just annex the place outright, or they just don't, or they don't set up a puppet government, then that's probably what's going to happen. Whatever's left will go to Europe and will go to the EU and NATO and all that. So that would be disappointing. I mean, the whole thing is rather sad, and I the fact that young men are dying in this conflict, is sad. I mean, there's nothing more noble and sweet than to die for one's country and all that. That sort of saying. Even though dying for the faith would be infinitely preferable, um, but dying for one's country is good too. But still, the fact that remains that this could have been, I think, and I hope, solved by more peaceful means. I mean, if it has to come to war, it has to come to war. That's why we have just war theory in the Catholic Church. But it shouldn't. But the fact that people are dying, as with every war ever, is something that makes you think what should have been done differently to prevent this. I mean, and this is gonna disrupt people's lives. There are widows now, and there are people without their sons, and that is not something that I particularly. I mean, if it had to, if this is what it has to come to, then it's what it has to come to. But it's still not something that we should be happy. We shouldn't be happy that X amount of Russians are dead or X amount of Ukrainians are dead. I mean, you should just want the war to be over with quickly. And so, to use the old Jacobite English Civil War song, now let's hope for peace, for the wars will not cease till the king enjoys his own again, or in this case, the emperor. Yeah, that's what I had to say about that.
All right, and now William.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to say I absolutely refute the point that the Ukrainians have no history and no identity. The Ukrainian identity begins with Kiev, and frankly, the Russian identity begins with Kiev too, as the Kievan Rus was the start of the state. The idea of the Eastern Slavs begins in Kiev. It was founded there, it was guarded by the Zaporizhian Cossacks, which were ruled by the Poles, by the Turks, and by the Russians. It was founded by the people who lived in the plains and in the steppes, and they were very, very culturally different and distinct from the Russians. The name Ukraine comes from the word the borderland, and the people who lived there were defined by the fact that they lived on the frontier of the Eastern Slav. They have a culture, they have a history, and they have a right to sovereignty. And they were wanted to express that sovereignty in 1917 and 1918 against the Bolsheviks when the Red Army tried to take it from them. They did not fail. Well, they did fail. And they paid the ultimate price when the famine ravaged their lands and the Soviets left them to starve. And so, when the Soviet Union fell, they decided to support their independence, separate from Russia because they didn't want to be dominated by the hegemony of Moscow again. And Russia repeatedly has attempted to infringe upon this right to sovereignty of the Ukrainian people. Firstly, by stirring up sentiment in the Russian populated areas, which originally didn't have any issue with being in Ukraine. But the Russians like to push their narrative and they like to get things their way, and they're now
Well,
more
then
than willing.
explain the anti-Russian laws passed after the Euromaidan.
Where was I? Anyway, and Russia really likes to do underhanded tactics to get what they want. things like in the
So does the West.
Donbass soldiers, many of which have been proven to be Russian soldiers that have been sent undercover in order to fight for these regions, jokingly referred to as the Russian soldiers on their holiday, and things such as insurgencies and civil unrest and trying to install puppet governments in Ukraine. And it's all about Russia pushing the Ukrainians closer and closer to the West, and then Russia acts like they're the victim. I'm not buying it. What this is, and what this has clearly been since the beginning, is a war of aggression caused by Putin, trying very so desperately to look big, as Russia continues to fade into irrelevance because their nation is growing increasingly decrepit since the fall of the Soviet Union, is being paled in comparison by China, by America, by rising powers in the European Union, and by other powers in the world as their nation slowly rusts and fall apart. This war shows the decay inherent in what is possibly one of the most pathetic military displays since the Russo-Finnish War, and we will continue to see as this war progresses that Russia will continue to fail, they'll continue to falter, and this war will continue to be much more than what they were bargaining for when it started.
Anyway, let's switch off of this uncomfortable topic and talk about St. Patrick's Day fun. As everyone knows that's listening live, today, Friday, the March 18th, the day of this recording, is the day after St. Patrick's Day. Now, of course, we all know who St. Patrick was. He was a Roman from Britain that was captured and sent to Ireland, and then when he was freed, he insisted, after he became a bishop, to go back to Ireland to evangelize the Irish people. His bishopric in Armagh is the head of the Church of All Ireland to this day. And if anybody has any favorite St. Patrick's Day traditions or any comments on Ireland in general, this is where you can put them.
A suburb of Columbus is called Dublin, and they usually host a bunch of festivities every year.
Wait a minute.
There's a-
Dublin, Ohio is a suburb of Columbus.
Yeah, it's in Franklin County. It's like 15 minutes. It's
I think.
basically so close together, might as well be a part of the city.
Wait, hold on. Is there another Dublin, Ohio?
Why? Are you thinking of a different Dublin?
No, I went to a Dublin, Ohio, a few years ago for a car festival thingy. It was very pretty. It had a Gaelic style Catholic church. Much enjoy. Can't remember if they had an altar rail in hindsight, but that was before I was really into that
There's
sort of stuff.
only one Dublin I know of, and it's in northwest Columbus.
Oh, maybe it's the same thing. Is it a very pretty pretty area? Nice nice
Very
downtown and all
wealthy
that.
city. Very wealthy city.
Yeah, that sort of sounds like where I was. Although that was where I was introduced to Ohio's off-brand Vernors.
What route did you take to get there?
I don't know. It was a few years ago. All I remember doing was cross the state line. It probably went down I-75.
Hey, how dare you cross state lines? Don't you know it's illegal in this modern day?
Oh yeah, right.
I in fact crossed not one, but two state lines just today.
Oh, you should be locked up and with the key
Yeah,
thrown away.
forget it. No trial. Just throw them into the Potomac.
Anyway, so I think it's important in this context of discussing Ireland that, I know that Will may disagree with this, but Ireland has fallen so hard, so fast, over the past decade and a half.
Yeah, Ireland with them ushering in abortion, and apparently the church hierarchy wasn't very proactive in trying to prevent that, and all these and them being very progressive with their gay whatever. It's just disgusting. Okay. Ireland, ever since she was converted, had retained her Catholicism for so long. It was. I mean, it's what she is, and to see her turn back on that. I mean, and this is the thing that happens with a lot of modern cultures, where they want to rally around the culture, but they don't want to rally around the Catholic religion that that uh, that made that culture. You know, it's just despicable.
I mean, when you predicate your entire identity based upon being anti-Anglo, you immediately start falling down a rabbit hole of, well, the English do this, so we must do the complete opposite. And the English don't want to practice degenerate sexual norms. Well, we're going to practice those degenerate sexual norms just because to stick it to those English. That's the Irish identity there.
And of course, there's all the fratricidal conflicts that corresponded with the Troubles. The Northern Irish, the Protestant Irish, and the Catholic Irish basically killing each other because of bad blood issues left over from the Civil War.
Thank
Which,
you, Cromwell.
Ugh.
yeah,
The
which,
one thing that everybody, the Irish Republicans, Windsorites, and Jacobites can agree on: Cromwell was cringe.
yes. We can talk. We could talk about the Irish Civil War another day. That's an entire new can of worms.
I like
Yes,
open.
yes, and
That's some good music though.
yeah, and the I think we're gonna have to. Unfortunately, I think we're gonna have to call it here. If unless anybody has any other closing thoughts.
Um, I don't know. Only Christ and His just laws can restore order to society. I mean,
Okay, and with that, we will wrap up. We will conclude in prayer in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right, that wraps things up for this episode. Don't forget, if you want to listen to us record this live, we record on Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern in our Discord server. Link is in the description. That is the only way you are able to listen to this live. We, of course, upload to YouTube on Mondays. I will be back home next Friday. I will be back home for next week's episode. So until then, may God bless you and may God bless the United States of America.